Well, it still might be hours away, but Hurricane Matthew is already hitting Florida in more ways than you can imagine. A Category 4 storm that is already producing 59-mile-per-hour wind gusts, according to the Sun Sentinel in Fort Lauderdale. We're told that now more than 10,000 are without power in the Miami-Dade area, and on it goes. We are going to be hearing from Senator Marco Rubio with the latest on the warnings that have been given to Floridians to get out of Dodge, or at least out of this hurricane's path, as quickly as possible. Time is running out. Within the next hour, all the major amusement parks and parks known around the world, including Disney and Universal and SeaWorld, are going to close all at the same time. That's how bad this is. That's how big this is. And as Janice Dean can tell you, that is how dangerous this is. Janice.
Well, still a Category 4 storm. It really has been a major hurricane for almost a week, which is a record for Atlantic hurricanes in the month of October. And Matthew is about to make its closest brush with Florida in the next couple of hours. So 140-mile-per-hour sustained winds, gusts of 165 miles per hour moving to the northwest at 14. And it's about 120 miles offshore of West Palm Beach, Florida. Just to give you a perspective of what a Category 4 is, 130 to 156 miles per hour, 157 plus, that would be a Category 5. And at one time during its lifetime, this was a Category 5. Let's take a look at the radar. You can see the outer bands moving across land here, and actually we could see the potential for tornadoes through the rest of the afternoon into the overnight and the rest of the week, as this storm, we think, is going to make its way northward all along the coast towards South Carolina and Georgia as well. So for the next several hours, for the next several days, we're going to be covering this storm. You can already see the winds that are gusting anywhere from 20 to 35 miles per hour, and there is the center of that storm as it gets closer to land. So here's the future radar. This is one of our reliable computer models overnight tonight. Gets very close to Port St. Lucie. Doesn't matter if it makes landfall, if it's got the core of those strong winds, we're going to be feeling 100, 120 mile per hour winds for not just a couple of hours, but a couple of days, as this storm is expected to move 200 miles along the coast with incredible winds for a long duration of time, and again, really not moving much except along the coast, perhaps making a landfall here and there as it continues to make its trek north and then northeastward. Now, we think it has the capability of strengthening because we have the Gulf Stream here, some of the warmest waters across the Atlantic with 88, 89 degree temperatures, so perhaps a strengthening as it makes its way towards landfall. And there's the National Hurricane Center forecast. We get a brand new forecast at 5 o'clock. Sometimes we get it a little bit earlier, so we'll bring you that very latest track as well as the coordinates. But as you can see here, Neil, we're expecting a very close brush with Florida later on tonight, overnight tonight, and into tomorrow, and then moving up towards North Florida, Georgia, the Carolinas, and then there's perhaps the chance that this recurves and affects the southeast coast again. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We still have to talk about the storm surge, 10 feet plus along portions of central and North Florida, and then into Georgia, which could be very dangerous, life-threatening storm surge. You know, one of the big killers from hurricanes is from storm surge and freshwater flooding. So a lot of this water is going to move inland. So not just a coastal event, but also inland as well. Back to you.
All right, Janice, thank you very much. Janice Dean on the phone with us now. Florida Republican Senator Marco Rubio says that people need to heed the governor's warning. Those 1.5 million the governor is told, especially within the path of this storm, to get out. Senator Rubio, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So a couple points. There are obviously two things that are happening. There are some people that don't need to move. They just need to stay in their homes and not be in the streets. And then there are others that live in areas that are calling for evacuations. Obviously, very typical of that is mobile homes, some of the coastal areas, places that are flooded. And those people need to heed those warnings. And by and large, we're seeing that. There are a couple Florida counties on the Treasure Coast where there are still some resistant, reluctant people who do not want to leave their mobile homes. But mobile homes, quite frankly, are not built to withstand a category anything hurricane. So really, people should not be staying there. And hopefully, if they're watching this broadcast now, they'll reconsider their decision not to do so, because they put our first responders at great risk of having to respond if there's a problem to come out and save them.
You know, Senator, a lot of them were emailing me saying, well, we'd love to leave, but I don't know what exactly roadway they were referring to. It could have been 95 or the Florida Turnpike, but it was gone to a halt. The traffic wasn't going anywhere, and they hear these stories about gas stations running out of gas, and they didn't want to be trapped. What do you tell them?
Well, first of all, in many of these counties, Palm Beach, Martin, St. Lucie, the emergency officials in those counties are still in the process of picking people up who are in circumstances. And all of these counties have a 311 system that you can call, and then so many of them are also now opening up 911 to those calls. But in essence, having people come over and get you if you need to be at the last minute evacuated, that clock and that time frame is shortened rather quickly. I can tell you traffic is actually flowing quite well in most of our interstates, including I-95 and so forth. Tolls have been waived on all the major highways. Most of the people are heeding the advice to stay home. So there's still time to get out, but I can just tell you here in a couple hours that window will have closed, and these people are going to get stuck in a very difficult situation if indeed the storm continues on the track that it's on. So we're trying to do everything we can to encourage those folks to move.
You know, maybe the reluctance is coming on the part, you usually think of, you know, older folks who don't want to leave their home or find it a huge inconvenience, but we're hearing a lot of younger people too, for whom this is sort of like a generational anomaly. I guess there hasn't been a hurricane that hit Florida now in the better part of a decade. So for them, this sounds like a lot of, you know, weather saber rattling. What do you say to them, those who doubt that this will amount to much?
Well, I think all they need to do is look at the forecast, and they can see where the storm is headed. And so in some places, like where I live in Miami-Dade County, we're going to have some tropical storm winds. But for the most part, unless you live in a really unsafe place, people can just stay home, stay off the roads. But if you live anywhere north of Palm Beach County, all the way up to Jacksonville, and even into Central Florida, they need to take this very, very seriously. This is not a small storm. This is a big storm of Category 4. It brings with it a lot of rain. It's going to create a lot of havoc and damage. You're going to be without power in many of these areas for days after the storm. So you really cannot take it lightly. There's no reason to saddle raber. Look, I know saber rattle. I mean, there's no reason to do that. I can tell you the people that do this first response work in Florida are the best in the world because of experience. Having gone through this before, they know what they are saying, and there is a reason why they are asking people in certain places to do certain things.
Real quickly, I know you got to go, Senator, but there's a possibility that this thing skirts the coast, just never hits land. Obviously, does quite a bit of damage, still as a Category 4 storm, but actually turns around again and hits again. How do Floridians prepare for that? Because this could be something that'll be around a while.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've seen some of those ensemble models that are available there on the website, and we don't want to think that far away. I mean, let's get through the next few days here, and then we'll see what happens. That's still far out in the future, and those models can shift. I've seen the model that have it turn around, but in essence, even if that were true, we would be doing what we're doing now, which is getting ready. And so let's get through this the next couple days here, obviously, and then if there's more to be done next week, we'll figure that out. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. But right now, it's a good day for people in Broward and Dade County to just stay home, and Palm Beach County and other places really heed the warnings to evacuate. You're running out of time here. You've probably got another hour and a half to make a move here before it gets very difficult to get out.
Good words of warning. Senator Rubio, thank you for taking the time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Senator Marco Rubio in Florida. Of course, you Floridians listening in the affected areas, you heard him. You've heard all of these reports. I think it's incumbent to be on the safe side and get out. You can debate whether those reports are accurate, maybe tomorrow. But for now, get out. All right, we're already seeing that this is way beyond just Florida. Now, a lot of you who tune in from the unaffected areas say, well, why are they going wall to wall with this? Well, leaving aside the fact that this is a state of some 20 million people and that it could affect, if it goes up the entire East Coast, as is a distinct possibility, 1/3 the U.S. population, it is already affecting gas prices. It is already affecting air travel. So just look around. With the hub and spoke system being what it is for air travel today, chances are if you're waiting for a plane in California, it will be delayed because of what's happening there. Stick around.
We were actually looking for little hurricane lamps, sterno grills, stuff like that.
So you're going to ride it out?
We are. We have a business to take care of. We have other houses to take care of, children. That's kind of our deciding factor that we stay and ride it out.
And we've seen them come and go, and we'll see them come and go again. You just hunker down and wait it out.
No, I was born and raised Orlando. I've been through every hurricane we've had, even Donna back in the 60s, so never left.
You know, I can understand people feeling that way, but I caught this interview Shepard was doing with this one woman in Palm Beach Gardens who was arguing she's a little further inland. Well, she was about a mile or so further inland. Bottom line is that why chance it, right? I mean, I can understand if you're by yourself, but first of all, you're putting a lot of people in harm's way to rescue you. And secondly, if you got family, you're putting them in harm's way too. I don't get it. But man, oh man, I wish these people well, but would it kill you to just get out and then see if you're right later on? All right, that's just me. Steve Harrigan, in the middle of all of this and all these people who are not heeding warnings. Steve, what do you make of that?
Neil, it is a real risk and a real gamble. This hurricane projections are not an exact science, so a move either way could certainly make a big difference. Here, we've seen conditions worsen steadily over the past hour, even though the very worst is still about 10 hours away. We've seen gusts of 30 to 40 miles an hour, much bigger waves, and steady wind right now coming in at about a 45-degree angle. This beach is gradually eroding as we speak. It's getting smaller and smaller, and some mansions on the beachfront probably get hit before this night is over. Across the state of Florida, 1.5 million people have been told they have to evacuate. It's often people on the barrier islands or people who live in manufactured homes. Some of those people told me this morning they don't know if there's anything they're going to have to come back to after this is over. So while some people are deciding to ride it out, a lot of Floridians and a lot of senior citizens looking for higher ground, looking for shelter, and really in a stressful situation, leaving their homes behind, not sure if they're going to be standing when they come back. Just to give you an idea of how bad this could be, if a Category 4 storm would make a direct hit on Florida, where I'm standing now would be 120-mile-an-hour winds about 2 o'clock this morning, and a storm surge possibly of 10 feet above ground level. So the water would be over my head here, and all these houses that I'm looking at could be underwater. Neil, back to you.
Incredible. Be safe, my friend. Steve Harrigan in the Sebastian Inlet in Florida. All right, now already just the talk of this, taking oil and gas prices, which were moving north anyway, well, still further north. A lot of this is Florida. Looks like it's going to be getting hit by all of this. But this is something that sort of plays out almost routinely whenever we hear of something weather-wise on the brink. But it's being compounded by these other market forces. Phil Flynn at the CME with the latest on that. Phil.
We're seeing oil prices really surge on this storm, Neil, and really because what the concern is short term is that oil tankers that deliver oil to the United States aren't going to be able to get anywhere close to land. Not only is this storm going across the Gulf of Mexico, shutting that down, as it goes up the East Coast, the tankers that bring oil into New York Harbor, one of the biggest import areas in the country next to the Gulf of Mexico, is going to be totally cut off. So we're seeing those markets go up right now. Now, what is difficult about this storm is the traders have really never seen a storm just like this, because not only is there a concern that it could go up to the East Coast, it's possible that the storm could veer around and come back towards the Gulf of Mexico. That means that supplies of oil could be disrupted for weeks, if not months. So this could be a significant event in the global oil market. Now, if the storm goes on land and dissipates, then you got to be worried about the lack of demand. You know, gas stations are already empty, but if you don't have power, you don't have drivers, you don't have roads that are not underwater, you're not going to see that demand. So we could see that set back, but more questions and answers right now as the storm develops.
All right. Thank you, my friend. The very latest on those oil prices, which have effectively doubled from their lows just a couple of months ago. So that force and series of forces were in effect prior to this storm. This has kind of obviously exacerbated it. All right. Fox Business Network's Blake Berman with the very latest on other businesses that have been directly affected by this, including a number of theme parks. Blake.
That's exactly right, Neil. They are taking no chances in Florida and across the southeast coastline. We'll give you one example. Disney, their theme parks closing tonight about 45 minutes from now. Also shutting down tomorrow. Disney taking measures like this for a storm for the first time in some 12 years. Airports as well across Florida are drastically scaling back their operations. Right now, there are more than 2,700 combined flight cancellations getting into and out of Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Orlando, Palm Beach, and Jacksonville's airports, just to name 5 there in the state. Now, as the evacuation orders are in place in Florida, Florida's Attorney General has issued a stern warning against price gouging.
If you're a hotel and you're increasing your prices, we are going after you. You cannot increase your prices in a state of emergency. So get ready, because we're coming for you.
Meantime, Neil, on the market, the major insurance companies ended the day as a mixed bag, many of them in the red. And when you take a look at those companies, the insurance companies with exposure specifically to Florida, they are faring worse, being down double digits week to date. Neil?
Wow. All right. Blake, thank you very, very much. Blake Berman.
Thanks.
You know, we had an interesting situation with Hillary Clinton, or campaign Clinton today. They had been committed to advertising on the Weather Channel to catch all those eyeballs. Makes sense. And then it looked like this thing was looking more and more problematic, if not deadly. And they pulled those ads. The tricky game of how you play a storm. All right, we are getting word now on that Hoboken, New Jersey train crash last week that apparently as it was approaching the station, it was going double the normal speed. And furthermore, the train was picking up speed as it entered the station. It's supposed to be about 8 to 10 miles an hour as it enters the station. It was going 21 miles per hour. No indication as to why that was happening, what the conductor, what the engineer was doing, what prompted that, but that it was going double the normal speed before it crashed. As you know, better than 100 people were injured. One person was killed standing not too far away from debris. But now we're getting a better sense that at least before that, as some had surmised even on the train, it was going pretty fast, or at least faster than it should have been, twice as fast. All right, now back to this hurricane threatening Florida and some points north. Right now, Category 4 storm, but it is already affected the campaign trail. The candidates aren't campaigning at all. We know just a couple of days ago, President Obama had canceled a Florida event he was doing on behalf of and with Hillary Clinton. And now we're learning that Campaign Clinton, which was planning to run ads on the Weather Channel, obviously to take advantage of some eyeballs that are going to be riveted on that channel because of the hurricane, and then pulled those ads. To Susan Crabtree of the Washington Examiner. Susan, what do you make of all this? I mean, it's a storm that has already had a big political impact, huh?
I mean, you know, it's really hard for politicians to take, kind of cool their heels a little bit and take some time off the campaign trail. Certainly, Florida is a very contested state, but their ground game is just absolutely grounded right now. They can't do anything. But bombarding voters with political ads right now is a completely risky strategy. You have to set the right tone. Is it over the top? This can be seen as completely craven, exploiting a storm. This is a very serious storm, we know. It already killed 136 people in Haiti. So I would say this is a no-brainer. I think you would opt out and not do it and not take that risk.
All right, and there's the other issue of so many Floridians are going to be without power. They don't know what you're advertising anyway, so it could be a moot point. But I'm wondering, too, about the effect of this on. I generally tend to think that maybe it doesn't affect candidates one way or the other. Maybe presidents, Barack Obama, obviously at the time of Sandy, and teaming up with Governor Christie. Many argue that helped him immeasurably in the 2012 race. President Bush, of course, with Katrina in New Orleans and the flyover, even though many people at the time said it was advisable for the president not to come down right away because obviously just having a U.S. president there would be more problematic than it was worth. Having said all of that, that's a good and bad example of the commander-in-chief inserting himself into this. So how does it affect candidates?
You know, it's interesting. Back in 2012, I was on the campaign trail with President Obama, and he was himself perplexed about this. It is a very difficult decision to make because, as Commander-in-Chief, he wanted to go down to Florida right before Hurricane Sandy. In fact, he did go down to Florida, and then the next morning, he was supposed to do campaign events all day, and they sent him back. They said Air Force One is going back, but the reporters, including myself, had to stay in sunny Florida. So it seemed like he was at odds about what to do, and so it is a very difficult decision. But thank goodness he did go back, and he had that handshake with Chris Christie and looked like a leader. He almost sacrificed that because who knows, at one point there was a risky strategy in there that he didn't know if Air Force One would make it back if he waited too long. So yes,
Susan, by the way, Susan, I should tell you, I didn't want to jump on you there, but per our discussion, the Clinton campaign has already suggested it might be a good idea to extend Florida's early voting as a result of this storm. What do you make of that?
Well, I think that's a pretty good decision. You know, early voting helped President Obama, as we learned in 2012, and in his re-election campaign, he did a really good job on the ground game and getting that early vote out. So I think that it's really frustrating for Hillary Clinton right now. You can see that with her strategy right now. She's really frustrated that she cannot go down there and campaign. She's cooling her heels, so she's pushing this early voting. It's a smart strategy.
All right. We'll watch closely, Susan. Thank you very much. The Washington Examiner's Susan Krabte. All right, now, it's one thing to see this coming your way. Can you imagine flying into it, to take a good look at it, the good look at the eye of this thing that is tightening and closing in now as this thing gets bigger and bigger and more powerful, hours away from hitting U.S. land? Meet the guy who just did it after this. Yet hit Florida, but already more than 13,000 as of this very second are without power in Florida. It's not even there. It's on the way. Get ready. Go, huh, Jonathan?
Yeah, although here on Folly Beach, a barrier island just off the coast of Charleston, they take the warnings very seriously because this island community was devastated back in 1989 during Hurricane Hugo. You can see that many of the businesses have already boarded up, and if we pan across the street, you can see a bar over there advertising that it's still open, but you can see employees out front waving, boarding up the windows there, wanting to protect them against the heavy winds that we anticipate to begin as we go into Friday. Many residents tell us that they plan to secure their homes and businesses today and then leave the island, and state highway officials are trying to make this as easy as possible. They're keeping the eastbound lanes of Interstate 26 reversed, so in other words, traffic in all lanes of I-26 between Charleston and Columbia are moving west, away from the coast. Officials had expected about 250,000 residents to leave the Beaufort and Charleston County areas.
6 a.m. this morning, 175,000 people have evacuated. That's not enough. We need to have more people evacuating.
Today, portions of Georgetown and Horry, Jasper, and Colleton counties were added to the list of evacuations. While many supermarkets and gas stations are still open with plenty of supplies today, Governor Haley warns that will soon change as managers and employees seek shelter as well. And as for people who do choose to evacuate the area, who are planning to weather the storm in a hotel, Governor Haley says outside of the Low Country, it's going to be very hard to find a hotel room in South Carolina, even in the Midlands, even in the upstate. A lot of people may have to drive as far as Charlotte, North Carolina, before they find any vacancy. Neil?
Amazing. All right, Jonathan Sari, thank you. Can you imagine one thing, just trying to fly near this thing? My next guest flew into this thing. Joins us now on the phone. Jack Parrish is his name, a hurricane hunter extraordinaire, pretty brave guy. What did you see, Jack?
We're We're halfway right now between the outer and the inner eye. This is one of these rare, they call them concentric eye hurricanes. It has an inner eye and an outer eye. We are currently inbound from the northwest, a little bit south of the west tip of Grand Bahama Island, and just about to go through the center.
We're told that the eye, I guess, is closing in, tightening. What does that mean? When that happens, what does that mean?
It is.
All right, I think it broke up with him. I apologize for that, but that is the nature of the beast if you're flying into a hurricane right now, and it is a Category 4 hurricane at that. Winds in excess of 140 miles an hour and expected to hit land within the next few hours in Florida, where the preparations are underway to try to make sure that it does as little personal injury or even killing as possible. But a lot of people are not heeding the governor's advice, indeed imploring order to get out of town. The bottom line is right now that even though he's advised 1.5 to 1.75 million Floridians to leave, less than a third have done so, which leads me to surmise the next 2/3 aren't going to budge. We have more after this. By the way, one thing that will come up in that debate, no doubt, jobs. Whether they're still growing. The administration, Democrats will continue to crow about the steady improvement in jobs, about 12 to 13 million created since the downdraft. Nevertheless, the pace of that job growth is slowing lately. When the jobs report comes out tomorrow, we're expecting around 150,000, which is down markedly from the roughly 200,000 plus we were averaging a little more than a few months ago. So some are worried about the pace of that recovery and whether it reverses into something. Enter Anthony Pratt. He's chairman of Pratt Industries, very big in all things food and food packaging. And he has a lofty goal that we can double that production in short order if we rearrange our priorities. Mr. Pratt, very good to see you.
Thank you, Neil.
Tell me what you're doing here, what your goal is.
Well, basically, the food production industry is America's biggest industry. It's bigger than auto, it's bigger than movies and tech, and it's bigger than oil and gas. And we think it doesn't get the attention it deserves. So what we're about is starting a national conversation about how we can double the size of the American food production industry and create millions of American jobs.
All right, now obviously if we have that capability to get food out to all over the globe, particularly Asia, which is a big goal now, I didn't realize what we had going for us in this country. That we have really awesome cows, I guess. We just don't utilize them enough.
Absolutely. America's got this tremendous opportunity to export a tremendous amount of food into Asia's booming middle class. There's 2.5 billion Asians going to come into the middle class with greater spending power. And America's natural advantage is safe, clean food in dairy and meat, as you said, and also in fruit and vegetables. And all of it added value, which means more factories, which means more jobs for Americans in America.
And presumably in Asia alone, if they're getting billions more joining the middle class, they're going to be demanding, right?
Absolutely, and we're just tremendously excited about this tremendous opportunity.
Do you weigh into the political scene like in our country? I mean, I know you were with Governor Pence not too long ago. What do you think of our race, the way it's going on?
Well, Governor Pence was very gracious in opening our $250 million paper mill in Indiana. We've built 3 of the last 4 American paper mills in our segment. And
yeah, he was wooing you aggressively. Right?
He's been. Indiana is a fantastic state to manufacture. The United States is the greatest country in the world to manufacture. We're fortunate that we employ 6,000 Americans in well-paying manufacturing jobs here.
Not too long ago, when you were looking at the Donald Trump phenomenon, you had told the Australian, the beauty of America is that it has a very regenerative system and anyone can become president. The British system of government makes it much harder for major change to happen like it does here. You still stand by that? That, in other words, someone like a Donald Trump couldn't do the same in your country?
We think that America is a tremendous, it's the greatest country in the world from the point of view, from many points of view. One of them is that the genius of American entrepreneurship is that its natural resource, I think, is entrepreneurial spirit, the propensity of someone to mortgage his house to start a business. And that's why I think why America regenerates so wonderfully better than any other country.
So you weren't making any comments one way or the other about Mr. Trump, who well, you're a billionaire like he is. He's getting a lot of heat in this country over not releasing taxes, that he had a big loss in 1995. What do you think of all that?
Well, look, we're business people, so we live with whatever political structure is of the day, but we're very grateful to the United States of America. It's the most generous country in the world, and as I said, we're just grateful that we've been able to create 6,000 well-paying manufacturing jobs.
You don't really want to talk about Mr. Trump.
Well, I think that America is great, has always been great, and will always be great.
That's a very good answer. You know what I was noticing when I talk to people from other countries, they always say the same thing to me, Neil, why is your election process so long? And they're right. I mean, it's been going on a couple of years now, technically. I know in Australia, I know in places like Britain, I mean, it's 60, 90 days, boom. All right. What do you think of our process?
Well, I think that whatever it is that America's doing is working, because I think it's a country of exceptionalism. I think the great presidents that have been through the ages, and I think that America is the greatest country that's ever been in terms of its contribution to the world economy. And it is going back to the food issue you mentioned, it's the world's food superpower, and it will continue to be so.
And in other words, to leverage that, the United States should leverage. We have that ability. We just don't. Why isn't it being leveraged more? Why aren't we utilizing that more?
Well, I think the food production industry, as Bill Gates said to me, doesn't get the attention it deserves, and it is a tremendous opportunity, and we want to start a national conversation as to how to double the size of the food production industry from $850 billion to $1.8 trillion by exporting more into the booming middle class of Asia.
And it could be productive all around. Real quickly, we're dealing with a hurricane that people are obsessing over, and for good reason. Obviously, Australia is not a stranger to natural disasters and that sort of thing. How do you handle that sort of thing down there? I mean, how quickly do you clear out an area that might be the target of a typhoon or worse? What's the Australian way to handle this?
Right. Well, firstly, our hearts go out to the people of Florida, and it's a tremendous tragedy, and I think that these weather events are tremendously devastating for the people concerned.
But if the Prime Minister comes out and says, we think it's a good bet, we have the states of emergency that are declared by various states, how does it go in Australia if an area is imperiled?
Well, I think not unlike America, people converge on the scene and do the best they can for the poor people that have been affected. And again, our hearts go out to the people of Florida.
Very good. Anthony Pratt, Pratt Industries Chairman. Now, you moved out of Atlanta, right? You were in Atlanta. Your kids, you wanted to get educated in Australia, right?
Yeah, that's right.
But you have a presence here in New York.
Absolutely. We spend about just under half our time here in the United States, and we travel all over. We have businesses in 26 states here, including the great state of Indiana, Georgia, Kansas, so we spend a lot of time all over the place.
Do you have any preferences on who you want to be the next American president?
No, we live with whatever. I think America will always be the great country it is, and we focus on the business of jobs, jobs, jobs.
That's a very fair and balanced answer. All right, thank you, Anthony Pratt. One of the richest people on the planet, by the way. He's done some things right. All right, we're going to get back to what's going on in Florida right now. Some updates to say about, including more people who are without power, more people who are refusing to leave, and more politicians who are furious that they are refusing to leave and are very close to wanting to arrest them. Stick around. You are watching Fox. I can probably understand why those of you who are out of this hurricane's path and wondering all these East Coasters, Southeast Coasters, more to the point, obsessing about it. Well, leaving aside that it's a very populous, important region, and that Florida with some 20 million residents, and up along the coast, you're talking tens of millions more. Here's the effect on you. We've already seen higher oil and gas prices, and that's been compounded of late. But flight delays are building. We've had just today 4,834 flights delayed. We've looked at cancellations totaling close to 1,800, and those within, into, or out of the United States, 1,531. We live in a world of this great hub and spoke system. You hear so much about where airports and regions are linked, and when one is down or weather is compromising it, well, you know the drill. Flights stop. So if you're in California wondering where your plane is, there you go. All right. Now, where does this thing go? Michael Schlachter, meteorologist extraordinaire, and what to expect. Michael, I mean, you were ahead of a lot of folks saying, watch this thing closely. We're watching it a lot more closely now. What do you expect?
Well, the first thing we have to realize is that just about 3 or 4 days ago, a lot of the forecasters thought this was going out to sea almost 500 miles, no closer to Florida. But the Greenland blocking, the North Atlantic Ridge, which actually forced Sandy back to the East Coast, is playing a large role here in keeping Matthew very close to North America. The good news for Florida is in 2 parts. I think some of your more populated cities, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm Beach, because the way the coast bends back, they're not going to see the worst of this. But once you get to Melbourne, Vero Beach, Daytona Beach, Jacksonville, that's where Matthew makes his closest approach and can really push Category 5. I honestly wouldn't even be surprised, shocked, if we flirted with Category 5 status as it gets close. So the northern Florida and Georgia and South Carolina coasts are the ones that really need to keep an eye on this.
But Michael, then there's a possibility if it does this clock thing and it swirls back again, right? Then what?
Right, so that's the next step, Neil. We got a U-turn going on because of Hurricane Nicole out to the east, that Greenland block that we talked about. So it actually might do a loop-de-loop and start right back all over again in the northern Bahamas, and then Florida and other people.
Wait a minute, are you telling me then that it hooks up with Hurricane Nicole, and I mean there's like a double whammy coming?
Yeah, there's actually a complex process called the Fujiwara effect, where these it's almost like an Earth-Moon gravitational dance, and sometimes 2 hurricanes close to each other can loop each other, sling each other, fling each other, and Matthew probably is going to have some pull from that and create a kind of a U-turn, and then who knows what happens 5, 6, 7 days from now in terms of the motion thereafter. So we have Chapter 1, which is pretty well defined up through the southeast coast, but then the U-turn and some big question marks beyond day 6.
Incredible. Thank you, my friend. Michael Schlachter. All right, in the meantime, as he was speaking, we are getting confirmation, of course, of all the major theme parks in Florida closing within the next 8 minutes or so. And also, Orlando International Airport will close all commercial flights in anticipation of this by 8 p.m. So even if you want to leave there, you'll be stuck flying out of there, because that is not going to be an option. And Orlando is pretty far away from the affected area. Get ready. This is getting very interesting. All right, minutes away from an update from Florida Governor Rick Scott, who has already been as blunt and as direct as he can possibly be on this thing, that this storm will kill you. Get out. He's urged close to 2 million Floridians to do just that, but about 1/3 of them have taken him up on that, and the other 2/3, we're told maybe half, when all is said and done, are staying right where they are. Leland Bennett live right now in Daytona Beach with the very latest. Leland.
You know, there's a lot of people not only sort of defying all of those requests to leave their homes and to get out while they can, but actually just sort of out here enjoying, if you will, the pre-storm. And you see those folks down there who are taking pictures, came up to me a little while ago, said, hey, we've never had a hurricane before. We just moved to Florida. And that is one of the real dangers and the real concerns that the police chief, especially here in Daytona Beach, has, saying it's not a matter of if people die in this storm, but when they die. And they have a real concern about folks just like that who've never been in a hurricane before. They have never experienced the power of these storms. And while the ocean looks just sort of rough right now, the storm surge is what they are so worried about. This storm will whip up water 12, 14 feet high, sending it up the beach here over this very little dune here, and then into all of these businesses that have been boarded up. And it's not just 1 or 2 blocks they're worried about, but the wall of water that can come up here will be well over this green banister you're seeing right now, and I'll send it a couple of blocks then inland. 2 million people, Neil, have moved to Florida since the last major hurricanes here, and those are the people that Governor Scott, the police chief here, and others are most worried about. It's just about 5 o'clock Eastern, and that is when officials in not only Orlando but a number of other cities are saying you need to be off the roads by then. Here on Daytona Beach, just a little bit north, they are saying sundown, everything shuts down, and they are closing the bridges so no one can get over here. The concern for the police chief, among others, is we're seeing the lifeguards now bring out their pickup trucks and use their loudspeakers to tell everybody to get off of the beach and out of the water. The concern now for police and for lifeguards just like that is those people who do not heed these warnings to get home and stay home will become real liabilities, in the sense that police will have to risk life and limb, quite literally, simply for the chance to go rescue them. And police now saying that for some people, if they call 911 late tonight, they simply may not be able to make it, even if they're risking their life. Neil?
You know, you mentioned, Leland, the 2 million people who've been added to Florida's population in that time. Millions more, of course, who don't remember a hurricane at all, because it's been, like you said, 11 years. Then I wonder about all the building that's happened since then, whether all that stuff is up to code.
Very good point. And after the big major hurricanes of 2005, Rita, Katrina, Charlie, Wilma, those kinds of things, there was a real push to bring all the building codes up. And I lived in Central Florida during those 2 years, and the construction that took place after 2005 was markedly different than that before 2005. Get this, though, one of the hotels that we were trying to stay in through this storm said that at 140-mile-an-hour winds for their windows may not be enough of a rating, Neil.
Amazing. Leland, stay safe yourself. Very, very well. Leland Bitter, the very latest now from Daytona Beach, hours away now from this thing hitting Florida. A state that has not seen this now in the better part of a decade is about to find out the hard way that distance doesn't make something grow any more fonder. So we're on top of that. Fox and Fox Business will stay on this. Be safe. Be well.